For those who don't know, my name is David Lewis, and I have the privilege of having Steve as my father-in-law, and I'm the proud husband of his daughter, Amanda, and 5 of his grandchildren, Camden, Jacob, Caleb, Joshua, and Charlotte, and our new baby on the way. I wish Steve could have got a chance to meet. When Amanda came to me and asked me, Steve requested that I bring the message at his funeral. And for any of you that know me, I'm not typically one who is short on words. But I found it to be one of the most difficult things I've ever had to prepare for. I started thinking about the family and us gathering together, and I was thinking about multiple different events that would bring friends and family throughout someone's lifetime all together in one spot. And I really can only think of 2. One is a wedding, and another one is a funeral. It's interesting how these 2 events have a way of bringing people from other areas, other states, and sometimes even other countries. We meet in the lobby or the front or outside and see people we haven't seen for years. Catching up. Oh my word, how long has it been? Conversations like that. And then towards the end of those conversations, we'll say, hey, it's been too long. We need to talk more. We can't let so much time go by before we reconnect. And then life gets away from us and years go by again. But when I thought about the similarities between a wedding and a funeral, that's kind of where it ended. Because when you're looking at those 2 events, and those pleasantries are over, you start to see that we're here for pretty different reasons. For instance, at a wedding, there is a sense of celebration. We're getting together from all around and we're celebrating this great event. And at a funeral, often there's great sadness and grief. At a wedding, we are celebrating and excited about 2 people coming together, which means 2 families come together, 2 lives are united together, and we're celebrating that. Whereas a funeral, we're dealing with the realization that a loved one has departed from our lives. At a wedding, the focus is on the future. We all imagine the couple and the exciting adventures that they have to look forward to. You know, having kids and going on vacation and careers and all the amazing things that they have to look forward to. So the perspective is the future. But at a funeral, it's the opposite. We're looking at the past. We're dealing with memories of our loved one. Remembering conversations that we had, times that we spent together, adventures that we went on. The focus is on the past. And in general, a wedding comes with a sense of hope, newness, change. And oftentimes, at a funeral, hope is in short supply. Except for the Christian. Except for the born-again believer. Amanda mentioned God's timing. On that Tuesday night, I had just got done. Amanda and Megan had not slept for 2 days, and so I relieved them to go home and get some sleep. Within 2 hours of them leaving, I was standing there by Steve's side, holding his arm as he was taking his last breaths. I called Amanda on the phone, And I put her on speakerphone. And I put it next to his ear, and she said, Dad, I love you. Dad, I love you. Dad, I love you. And I was holding his arm, and the nurse looked at me and said, David, he's gone. And I'm so thankful for friends like Michael and Karen Hart, who once they found out, dropped everything and came to comfort me in the hospital because I was there by myself. And as I was preparing for this sermon, I saw that, yes, the Bible says stuff about the weddings, but it says far more about death. It spends more time in the scriptures preparing the believer for the hereafter, preparing us to think differently in this world about when our time is done. And it led me to John chapter 11. And if any of you are familiar, it's the story, it's a funeral for Lazarus. I'm going to read and just share with you what God has comforted me and the hope that He has shown me in the midst of this time. Starting in verse 1, it says, Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and Martha, his sister. And it was that Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. And therefore the sisters sent word to the Lord, saying, Lord, behold, the one whom you love is sick. And when Jesus heard this, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but is for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. And now Jesus loved Martha and his sister and Lazarus, and so when he had heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days, and then afterwards said to his disciples, We are going to Judah. So to paint the picture, Mary and Martha knew the power of their Lord, their rabbi, who they had followed. And when their brother was sick, they knew, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to send word to Jesus because we know He'll be able to do something. And Jesus has a response that kind of throws you back a bit. He says, first, that this sickness wasn't unto death, but then his response was to stay 2 more days. He didn't just get up and say, well, yeah, we better get over there as quick as we can. He stayed 2 more days because he was on mission. And so there's this mourning in the next couple of verses. There's people surrounding Mary and Martha, and they are comforting them in this time of difficulty because Lazarus ended up dying. But where the Lord gave me hope was this interaction between Martha and Jesus. In verse 17, it says, So when Jesus came, he found that he, Lazarus, had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away, and when many Jews had joined the women around Mary and Martha to comfort them concerning their brother. And now Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. And now Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask God, He will give you. And Jesus said to her, Your brother will rise again. And Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection in the last day. And before I keep going, I want to say she was grieving, even though she knew that her brother would rise again on the last day in the resurrection. So grief, I want to squash that any grief or sadness is no lack of faith. And so I'm pretty amazed that she had this knowledge, that she knew that her brother would rise up in the last days in the resurrection from the dead. And when she said that, it's pretty amazing that she would quote that to Jesus, and he takes it a step farther. And Jesus says to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? And she said to him, Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into the world. Loved ones, that's what Steve William May believed. In preparation for this, we spent some time listening to his sermons. And when in one of the sermons he gave his testimony, it was a real testimony because he didn't hold back. He said when he was 8 years old, actually prior to the age of 8, he, obviously we all, if anybody knows Papa, Pastor Bill May, I mean, he was just a rock, a pastor, preaching the Word of God. So that's what they were influenced by, he, Mike, and Jim. And so Steve tells his testimony that Jim got baptized. And Steve says, he's like, I looked and Jim got baptized and all these people were giving him all this attention. And he said, I thought to myself, I want a piece of that action. So that goes along with that sense of humor. I want a piece of that action. But he says, but I didn't want it to look like I was following what my brother Jim was doing. So I waited just long enough. And then I said, I wanted to be baptized so that he could get that attention. And that was at the age of 8 that he got baptized. But then he confesses in that testimony that he did not really place his faith in Jesus Christ. But he did, at the age of 12, go to the Lord and say, Lord, I ask you to forgive me of my sins. I confess you as Lord. I need salvation. So at the age of 12, he would have been able to answer that question the way that Martha did when Jesus said, do you believe? And he would have said, yes, I do believe. So what does this look like? What is this life? What is this hope in the resurrection? This hope that we have as believers? This hope that Steve placed his faith in? Paul gives us a description of this, and I'll tell you, I have to credit Pastor John at Grace Community Church out in Buckeye, because I was sitting in a class, and prior to that day, I said, Lord, I have no idea what to say at Steve's funeral. I have no idea what to say. And I'm sitting there listening to this pastor talk, and he says, oh, and by the way, if any of you out there ever needs anything to say at a funeral, turn to this passage. And I'm like, wow, you have no idea. I had just prayed today. I didn't even know what to say or what to cover. And he gave this to me. And what an amazing comfort and hope we can get from this, especially the fact that we know that Steve had battled major physical sicknesses. And maybe some of you in here are as well. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, starting in verse 16, he says, therefore we do not lose heart. Even though our outward man is perishing, yet our inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction is but for a moment. It is working for us a far exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we do not look at the things which are seen, but the things which are unseen. For the things that are seen are temporary, but the unseen things are eternal. For we know that if our earthly house, this tent, is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house made with hands, eternal, not with hands, eternal in the heavens. For in this we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed with our habitation, which is from heaven. If indeed we have been clothed, we shall not be found naked. For we who are in this tent groan, being burdened, but not because we want to be unclothed, but further clothed, that mortality would be swallowed up by life. Now he who has prepared us for this very thing is God, who also has given us the Spirit as a guarantee. As we are always confident, knowing that while we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord. For we walk by faith, not by sight. We are confident, yes, well pleased rather to be absent from the body and be present with the Lord. That is a hope that the world can't offer. I grabbed a hold of that hope on October 25th, 1999. I had lived for the world and everything that it had. But nothing gave me the hope like Jesus Christ. The hope in the eternal. Like Paul said, our hope is not in what we can see, because what we can see is temporary. But what we can't see is eternal. And that is where Steve William May had placed his faith. Not in what he can see, but what he can't see. What hope lies in heaven for eternity. But Paul mentions something here about being clothed. Obviously, imagine you're sick, your body. We're all going to face it one day. Nobody escapes it. It may come in different ways, but nobody is going to escape it. Our body is going to begin to break down. Some earlier than others. And what Paul addresses is that we don't come to a mindset as a believer, man, I can't wait to throw off this body and be unclothed. Just be around, be a spirit. No, he says our desire is that we would be fully clothed. The amazing description of this clothing, an amazing description of this clothing is in Isaiah chapter 61. Isaiah chapter 61, verse 10. I will greatly rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall be joyful in my God, for he has clothed me with the garments of salvation. He has covered me with the robe of righteousness. As a bridegroom decks himself with ornaments, and as a bride adorns herself with jewels. We don't want to be unclothed, but we want to be clothed with the righteousness of Christ. In Corinthians it says that he who knew no sin became sin, that we might become the righteousness of God. So that you and I, when we place our faith in the Lord, and if the Lord were to ask the question, do you believe in me? And we said yes, that we then now take on his righteousness, and he takes on our unrighteousness. And therefore we don't stand in the presence of God on our own merit. And that's what Steve preached. We don't stand before God and say, look at what I did. We stand before him and say, Lord Jesus, thank you for what you did. Thank you for what you did. I close with this. An amazing song in Christ Alone. The last verse really spoke to me. You know how you get those songs in your head and you just want to play them over and over and over and over again. People drive by you down the road and you're just pelting it out, you know. That was this song for me, and it really struck me, this last verse. No guilt in life, no fear in death. This is the power of Christ in me. From life's first cry to final death, Jesus commands my destiny. No power of hell nor scheme of men could ever pluck me from his hand till he returns and calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I stand. Lord, thank you for your comforting words. Heal the brokenhearted today. Bring peace to those who are feeling grief. Bring us that hope that only you can bring us through Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for the power of your scriptures and how you've told us in advance. We don't have to, it's not a mystery. We don't have to wonder what's going to happen. We actually can take hope and rest in the fact that we know where Steve William May is at right now, and that he is in your presence, Lord Jesus, because he placed his trust in you. And you have wrapped him in the garment of salvation and in the robe of righteousness. And we look forward to one day when we are all gathered together in heaven, being able to see him again. In Jesus' name we pray. Everyone said, amen. We're going to have a slideshow that the family put together.
There's a land that is fair and gay, and by faith we can see it far, and the Father waits over the way to prepare us a dwelling place there.